Hello and welcome back to Election Time News America. Today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. And today we're going to be going over the elections in New Jersey and Virginia, those gubernatorial elections that are, believe it or not, literally 12 days away. 12 days left until these elections, and then we're going to be live streaming election night. So make sure to subscribe and to hit notify me next to that live stream. Election Time News are for all things elections and politics, from summations to poll reviews and news. Subscribe below for more content like this about American, Canadian, and Australian elections. Also, make sure to follow the Substack, Threads, Instagram, and X, as well as our website, electiontimene.ws, linked in the description below as well, for news feeds and our latest predictions. Remember, there's never a dull moment in politics. So what we're going to be looking at, obviously, there's these two races. So to start things off, it's going to be 26 to 22 right now. So if Democrats win both, then it'll be 26-24 with the Republican advantage. And if Republicans win both, then it'll be 28 to 22, also Republican advantage. The Republicans hold 26, the Democrats hold 22. As of right now, it is 27 to 23. So what are we looking at here so far? So let's look at 2021 first. And 2021 had some interesting split result, and both of them were very strong for Republicans. If we look into the race, we can see here that Virginia actually flipped red. Glenn Youngkin managed to win that race by 1.9%. And so that was off of a Biden midterm year. That was after 2020. You had some relatively strong performances in some of these races here across the country for the Democrats, except for in Washington, and that continued in 2024, relatively poor performance, but still, 2021, relatively okay performances in 2020. 2021 came around not that strong. The interesting thing about New Jersey is that it is still unique, as Phil Murphy became the first Democratic governor reelected since 1977. And this was also the first time that the governorship of New Jersey went for the same party as the party in the White House since 1989. So those are definitely some interesting things where it kind of bucked against the tradition there in the state of New Jersey. But it still was quite a bit redder than Joe Biden had done just 12 months prior. If you look, 3.2% on that ballot, yet at the same time in 2020, Biden won it by 16%. So it's quite a bit closer than it had been just a few months prior at that point. In Virginia, 2 points or so for the Republican there, and that was after Biden got 10 points in the state of Virginia. That was the best margin for a Democrat in the state of Virginia going all the way back since FDR. So that's definitely going to be a huge shock. That's 12 points of flipping there, 12% shift from 10.1 to 1.9 on the nose. And so that definitely was a bit of an issue there for the Democrats. That was a bit of a sign that people weren't necessarily very happy with Joe Biden that early in the cycle. And so from there, you ended up seeing more things happening out of that. You ended up having worse Republican support or Democratic support elsewhere. Glenn Youngkin, 50.6% of the vote. It was because there was a lesser turnout in some of these outer regions over here in the northern part of the state. This is where a lot of Democrats are. Out in some of these outer regions, you could see even Roanoke County went red by a strong amount. Montgomery County, which is typically a flip county there. Virginia Beach City, Chesapeake City, these are ones that are typically relatively close. And Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears here won by 1.6%, and so that's going to be with basically the exact same numbers as Youngkin, except just a little bit worse. And then by 0.8% was Jason Miyares de-seating incumbent Mark Herring. Now, he's going to be the incumbent against Democrat Jay Jones, who definitely has a bit of controversy, but Jay Jones is slightly favored right now, narrowly. Probably going to win by about 2 percentage points right now. Lieutenant governor is probably going to go blue by roughly equivalent to the governor's margin. So that's just a quick overview as of right now what happened in 2021. And now pivoting over to the less competitive state is going to be the state of Virginia. So what we're looking at again is going to be these numbers here, but what we're looking at in Virginia is going to be a bit bluer of a county map, obviously, getting some swingy areas out over here, these outer suburban counties, outer Radford and Montgomery. You have Lynchburg, which actually I believe went red for Trump this most recent cycle. You can see Nelson a bit closer in the areas around Charlottesville as well. The outer Richmond area, Virginia Beach, and Chesapeake are being bluer, as well as Northampton County up in the Panhandle. The northern region is definitely going to be a little bit stronger, probably about 70% for Spanberger. She's a strong performer, was in the congressional district that sits right about here in the state. Managed to flip it in 2018, narrowly hold on in 2020 as well. So, and even in 2022. So that's definitely going to be very interesting to see. This is generally the county map projection. And we currently have 11.1% margin for Spanberger as of right now. This is going to be with a strong showing here. If we look at the approval rating for Trump, which is definitely going to be a big part of this, Virginia 14.4 in the red and 12.9 amongst 2024 voters. So that's definitely going to harm things a good bit with the vote here. Definitely soured against him, especially in that northern Virginia region, especially considering the fact that it only voted for Harris by 5.8%. That's still a bit more than Clinton, but it should still be noted that that is still quite a bit of a drop, even amongst 2024 voters. Now it's minus 13. That's more than Biden won the state by. So definitely going to be a concern for Earle-Sears, especially she's somewhat tying herself to Trump a good bit there. 11.1%. Most of these are based on some crosstabs from some recent polls. This is just voter demographics across the state, and then the support for each in the crosses, and then just adding up the support together, and getting a raw margin there. So actually, interestingly enough, New Jersey's a lot higher than Virginia, but that's mostly because of that Democratic number being somewhat high, very high support for the Democrats, but also independents. But anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. Virginia, 11.1% for this. That's going to be just barely likely. It could potentially end up being safe, depending on how well things go between now and Election Day for Abigail Spanberger. Potentially, things could actually end up getting worse. As of right now, she does seem on track to cruise to a victory in the state of Virginia. If we look up at some polls here relatively quickly, just pull up RCP, then we can see that the overall, quickly pull up governor polls, yeah, that one. And so we're looking at for 2025 is definitely have these open, and there we go. So that's basically what we're looking at. We're going to need this in a minute. Spanberger's only up by 6.1 in RCP, but this definitely is very selective, and some more Republican ones are held as opposed to some Democratic ones. But still, you have a bit of trajectory in the wrong direction, right? Roanoke College plus 15, plus 17, plus 7, and then that's mostly going to be from lesser amount of undecideds. Most of those undecideds are going to be breaking for Earle-Sears, so that's going to be the number one thing to note as far as that goes as well. Trafalgar Group from plus 5 to plus 3, that's tightening as well. Trafalgar Insider Advantage plus 3. If you look down, there's nothing for Insider Advantage here either. The Hill Emerson plus 1, believe it or not, but there's more recent ones plus 10, so that's the other direction. Christopher Newport University 12 and then 10, so it's all kind of all over the place, and so that's going to be the main thing there. But as of right now, their polling average is plus 6.1%, so that's going to be the number one thing as far as that goes. But definitely as far as the actual crosstabs go, things are looking a bit better for Spanberger than those polls might be suggesting. And so, with turnout dynamics in midterms, obviously going to be benefiting Democrats even more so than we saw in 2022, which was looking like it was potentially going to be a red wave. We were looking at potentially Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania going red, Georgia going red, all of those. That would have easily been a sweep for the Republicans. Wisconsin still went red, but 1, 2, 3, 4 more seats for the Republicans. That would have been 53. And so now we would have ended up with way fewer, probably would have been a bit more favorable for the Democrats in if that had happened, honestly. But still, that definitely would have harmed quite a bit as far as that goes, or potentially would have done even worse. So then actually you could have potentially seen Wisconsin and Michigan flip as well. But anyway, enough about hypothetical stuff. This was potentially going to be a very, very bad year for the Democrats. It ended up being okay. I mean, Vance only won by 6.1, Grassley by 12.2, which, in 2016, Grassley won by 24. So, again, it's about those turnout dynamics, and in a year like 2025, we can expect that the turnout is going to be very, very low amongst Republicans. And so also in this crosshouse was the likelihood for them to vote, or if they already did, and Democrats were more likely to go out and vote whether they actually did or not. So that's going to be the number one takeaway for Virginia. Spanberger very heavily favored. Looking at potential, actually that's not 83.19% chance of victory there. This one's actually, see if I can pull it up on the side. There it is. Got on a monitor 73.1. 58. There we go. 73.58. There it is. Okay. So Virginia being very strong for Spanberger. There's still a bit of a tail here for Earle-Sears just because of the uncertainty of the polls. Some of these polls here, if we look down at the section here, just looks at every single one of them. You do still have a few where it's a little bit close, but even then it's still 5 plus or minus 2.8. In theory, Sears could win, but it's very unlikely at this point. So that's almost certain for Spanberger to be able to secure the governorship there. And now we go to the more competitive of the races in New Jersey. This one is still going to be a Democratic win, 5.7%, potentially being able to break that 6-point margin. It'd be interesting to see both of them be likely, but we're looking at a better map than it was in 2021, where we had, only a 6-point win in Bergen and 4 in Passaic. Passaic County flipped for Trump. Ciatterelli's going to be looking for those Trump 2024 voters in Passaic County to show out. That's going to be how he's going to be able to win. If we look at Camden County, that's not necessarily as Burlington County is a lot closer than should have been. Somerset, same sort of thing. But here we're looking at a potential safe Somerset County. This is Mikie Sherrill's district where it was, so I expect the margins in Morris and Somerset are going to be relatively strong for her there. She also did relatively well there in the primary. Hunterdon kind of on the edge there as well, a little bit for her district. Not necessarily, it's more in this middle region. This is more Kent's district? I forget his name. Keene. I knew it started with a K. That's Keene's district right there, so that's not necessarily hers. But anyway, if we look now, projected margin actually 16.5 based on these turnout numbers, but that's honestly going to be because of the independent support for the Democrats is actually higher than for the Republicans. Originally, Jack Ciatterelli was winning the independent vote, but there's actually still 11% undecided right now. If that does go to Ciatterelli, then he would narrowly win the independent support. If we look at that number there, that would be a 13-point margin, so it still wouldn't be very strong for him. I think in some other polls, it was like 65% to 30%, and even then, if we look at the potential margin there, 1.1%. So it does come all the way down to those registered independents who's going to end up winning this race. But even then, Sherrill would still end up winning there. So it is definitely a favored race just based on the dynamics in the state itself. But Trump's even worse in New Jersey than in Virginia. And with how strongly Ciatterelli has been tying himself to the Trump administration and saying that he has rated him an A for his second term, I'm not necessarily sure that's going to go over all too well. He's really putting in a gamble to potentially be able to get these Trump 2024 voters on these outer regions of the urban cities areas where Trump did particularly well in 2024. If we look at the comparison, I mean, right here, 13, 18 points better than in 2020, 19 in Passaic. I mean, straight up, it was strongly safe for Biden by 16. I mean, even then, it was 22 for Clinton and 28 for Obama. Interestingly enough, Bergen was only 11 for Obama, and then 13 for Clinton, 16 for Biden, and then 3 for Harris. So definitely struggling in the outer areas. Still very, very strong. Essex County's 45 points, but that was 55 for Biden. So the Democrats are kind of collapsing everywhere in urban New Jersey. And I mean, 5 counties flipped for Trump here, all between 2 and 6 percentage points. So it definitely is a concern when you're looking at the potential for these voters to show out, but at the same time, it's really not going to be that big of a deal when you're looking at the likely turnout dynamic. So the interesting thing about this race is it could either be a very, very narrow Ciatterelli win, probably about under 3 points. It could be a narrow Sherrill win, probably about 2 points. It could be a stronger Sherrill win, about 7, or it could just completely blow him out of the water, and it could be up to like 12. It could be over 12. It could be up to 15 points, honestly. Not necessarily a Chris Christie level win from probably not an original, up to original Phil Murphy victory in 2017. Not a Chris Christie victory from 2013, not that high, but definitely a somewhat high margin. But as of right now, it is going to be a lean state, and it will continue to, unless we end up seeing some stronger numbers here. The early vote isn't necessarily looking fantastic, but if we look at the overall on RCP, Sherrill's up by 4.1, and that's with Trafalgar plus 1. If we look down at there are no other Trafalgar ones. Rasmussen originally had, they're also not on here either. Rutgers Eagleton has plus 5 originally, plus 21, and then plus 10. But that's as these, actually her vote share dropped originally and then went up. So now she's at 50%, which means that she would win 45, which means there's 5% undecided. So that's going to be the main thing to note. Quinnipiac as well, plus 9 to plus 7. That's not that much tighter. Fox News, relatively strong pollster, honestly. Sherrill plus 5, not necessarily that terrible. Qantas Insights from 10 to 2. That's definitely devastating. Qantas Insights, if they end up being right, then we would definitely end up seeing a Ciatterelli win based on the trends that suggests in and of itself. Plus 10 to plus 2. That would, in fact, be enough for her to lose. That would mean trajectory. But at the same time, she only went down by 1 percentage point, and he went up by 7. So that's actually going to be mostly undecideds, making up their minds, and mostly going for Ciatterelli. So there's definitely a lot going on, even in just these numbers. The top line does not say close to all of it. Not to mention the margin of error definitely could end up being relatively maxed, so that you could, in theory, end up having Sherrill win, even in the Rasmussen Reports one, or Ciatterelli win, but it would be literally by a sliver. Quinnipiac here, 3.6. That means you could have Ciatterelli win by 2.2. So you're narrowly holding on here. Fairleigh Dickinson, 3.9 for 7. 3.9 times 2 is just under 8. It's going to be 7.8. So that means that Ciatterelli could win by 0.8%. 5, that means that he could win by 1. And Trafalgar Insider Advantage, 3.5. That means that he could win by up to 6. Or Sherrill could win by up to 8. So all of these are generally relatively consistent in including a 5.7 to 6.5 point margin in their margin of error. So that seems to be kind of consistent as far as that goes, which is definitely reassuring for a median result. But we'll definitely have to see how things go. In a state like New Jersey, turnout definitely was in the dumpster for Democrats in 2024. I mean, 232,000 votes for Harris, 285,000 for Biden. If you look 204,000 to 217,000, that's way more losing votes from Biden than gaining votes for Trump. Here, 129,000, 95,000, and you're looking at 100,000 versus 92,000. So it's really 266,000 versus 224,000. That's actually not that bad. No, never mind. That's 22,000 votes. 75,000 versus 83,000. That's only 8,000 gained. So again, again and again and again, it's not really that Trump gained votes. He did. He did get more votes in 2024 than in 2020. 1.968 to 1.883. He definitely gained votes, but especially in the rural areas, he did gain a lot of votes, especially in like Ocean County. He gained only 10,000 votes there, but Harris went from 119,000 to 105,000 for the Democrats. So, but again and again and again, is that Democrats didn't show up, except for even Camden County. That's 20,000 votes down. Mercer, that's 15,000 votes. Somerset, 111. 98, that's 13,000 votes. 144,000 to 181,000. 147, that's 35,000 votes right there. So all of that together is just a recipe for disaster in future cycles. They will have to make sure that those show out on election night in order to be able to secure this state. And if you end up continually having the lack of support for the Trump administration and continued support of it by Jack Ciatterelli, we'll just continue to have to see if this gambit pays off. It hasn't when Trump wasn't in the White House, but maybe, just maybe, this actually will work now that he is in the White House and able to enact his agenda, being able to motivate those voters to come out. But most likely, it will just be the other way around, paving the way for Sherrill to win, making this a 26 to 24 map for 2025. Thank you all so much for watching today's video, and make sure to subscribe if you're not already, and have a fantastic rest of your day.